Hi, Emily. It's nice to see you again after multiple failed attempts to connect because, schedules and calendars and COVID.
Yes, well, I'm happy to be here. It was fun getting to rec with you up in Brooklyn a couple months ago, and I'm looking forward to continuing the conversation.
Yeah, I'm very excited to continue the conversation. We had our chance to ruck together back in May, which was really fun, and I was already I was already a fan and a follower and a user, I guess, if you would say that. But since our conversation, I felt inspired and I've really been keeping it up a bit more diligently and kind of spreading the word. And it's one of those things that, in this little bubble that we live in of having conversations with people in our industry and like-minded people, it seems like a little obvious at this point. Not obvious, but it seems like a common topic, right? And then
Yeah.
I go outside the bubble and people are like, what are you doing? What is that about? So I'm very excited to bring that conversation out of the bubble a little bit more.
I
Let's
get this a
talk
lot.
about rucking. Yes, you get it all the time, I'm sure.
Yes. We've been at this for a while. I mean, I first heard what rucking was back in like 2005
Hmm.
because my husband was doing it for the Special Forces selection. And it's like the one thing he did like really well at in the Army stuff. So that's what he wanted to focus on, right? And, it's funny because we've been doing this for a while now and bringing it from the military to kind of everyone else.
Yeah.
And we laugh because we live in a small beach community near Jacksonville, Florida. We before we'd see someone rucking and we'd be like, yeah, there's cousin Sue and there's Aunt Jane, and now we're like, I don't know that guy. I don't know who
Yeah.
she is. And we're seeing it and we're like, wow, it's really cool to see people. And they're not, sometimes they're wearing our gear, sometimes they're not, but they're rucking. And
Right.
what makes us so excited to see it because, like you said, it's like, it seems so obvious. It's such a like a simple kind of fundamental
Hmm.
activity that's just been sort of closeted in the military.
Hmm.
And I agree with my husband, and I say this too, that the military takes the fun out of everything. So when people that have been in the military, you talk about rucking, they're like, I don't want anything to do with that. Until you
So
tell them,
interesting.
like, well, the way we do it is a lot more fun. It's not 100 pounds. You're not sleep deprived. You're not food deprived. You're not having to jump out of an airplane
Right.
or run for cover, things like that. It's actually, you're doing it for fun and for
Right.
exercise.
Yes, with joy and
Yeah.
intention. Well, okay, so let's talk because I actually am not super aware of the military origins of it or
Hmm.
what the original purpose of it was. So can you just share your story and how you guys came together? It's
Sure.
such an amazing story between you and your husband in the first place, and how you got this idea to kind of bring rucking and translate it more to a mainstream civilian audience, for lack of a better word.
Exactly. Well, it was all an accident, but
Okay.
a happy one at that. So just going back, I mean, rucking goes back since the beginning of time.
Right. Right.
Prehistoric man, once they were able to like capture some sort of form of sustenance, an animal, they would put it on their backs to carry it from place to place. And then you go to Spartans and Romans and other militaries, they were always sort of packing out and carrying things. And in that perspective, you think of it, wow, men were always having to carry things. But alongside of that, the history tells us that women have always been really predisposed to that as well. And we can get more into that about why this is such a good exercise for women later. So the military has always wanted to be able to move large groups of soldiers underweight because you have to have your provisions. You have to have your ammo, your food, your medical equipment if that's your, MOS, your which is like your job in the army, and medical supplies and whatever it is, radios for communications. So that's always just been like a basic tenet of the military. And my husband, after 9/11, decided he wanted to enlist. He was in investment banking, said, the life for me, I want to serve my country. So he signed up and started going down this path. And at the time, they had this program called 18 X-ray, which is basically allowing people off the street to go to the Green Beret program. That doesn't always exist. It's kind of comes and goes based upon need. Usually you have to you know, join the infantry in the army and then go kind of earn your stripes and then get invited to do these things. But different times, I didn't really understand what he was doing. I didn't know what I wanted to do at age 22 much either. I'd just come back from a year of volunteering in Ecuador. And so he went on this journey. Somewhere along the way, we got married. And then I ended up kind of simultaneously, through his sort of pushing, joining the CIA to also kind of serve my country.
Okay, but I'm sorry, just
Yeah.
time out for a
Yeah.
second. Nobody
Sorry.
joins the CIA because their husband is like, hey, you should think about this. Like, this is somewhere in your DNA, right? It's not like,
Yeah.
oh, you might want to consider a career in retail or also maybe protecting our
For
national
saying that.
security.
Thanks for saying that, because
Okay.
there is this service had always been a big part of my life. I remember being told by my college admissions person that I got in because of all the service work that I had done that
Okay.
Georgetown appreciated. And I did a lot during my time at Georgetown. I joined Catholic Relief Services afterwards. I thought I was going to do more humanitarian work.
Mhm.
So this sort of, the funny thing is I got recruited. It's a long process to get your clearance and to get into these sorts of jobs. It takes years. And all along the way, I was like, I'm not sure this is for me. Like, maybe I want to go work for Doctors Without Borders, or I want to go to, Red Cross or some of these other organizations. And that's where Jason came in. He was like,
Okay.
because he had actually gone down this path and wanted to do this kind of work, but he wanted to do the more paramilitary side of it. And they were like, sorry, we don't train that. You have to go actually do that with the military and then we'll talk. So he kind of gave me like hey, I went through this process. I didn't get through. Go for it. And I got through. And so all along this is happening, we thought we were going to be government workers for life. But the reality on the ground is like when you have two driven people in different careers, and I mean, he was in Iraq, I was in West Africa, and we were trying to figure out ways to make our lives work together. And being a tandem couple in these organizations is kind of a pipe dream. So along the way, he's on some R&I, we're at R&R, rest and relaxation time. And he's visiting me in West Africa where I was posted. And I was a case officer at the time, which is the people that are out there recruiting sources for, intelligence. And it was a
Laughing because I'm
wild.
thinking about what I was doing at that time, and it was not that. I was making mojitos and
I know you're like 25, and they like, this is what I tell people. I'm like, if you want a lot of responsibility at a young age, go work for the government, because they're
yeah.
like, here you go, you're trained up, for trained, you got this. So we're in my government issued house chatting about what's next. Like, how are we ever going to live together? We're on like year 4 of being married, never living together. So
Hmm.
we're trying to figure it out. I'm kind of like, why don't you get out and join me on this side of the house? And in the but we knew that was going to take at least 3 years right
Mhm.
there. So at that point, I was like, hey, we had been talking, like he got issued all this amazing gear, right, from the
Okay.
Army. And I mean, so cool. Like these med bags that you fold out, there's like a clamshell. So they open flat,
Hmm.
and all these great organizations and pockets. And I wouldn't call us like gear dorks, because I've met real gear dorks at this point, but we were inching that way. And so I
Okay.
had a couple favorite bags that I would talk to him about and I'd use. And when he got this out, we were like, oh, these are so awesome. And then we started like kind of exploring this path of like, maybe you could build a go bag, because he kept calling about like, he got to West Africa and he saw the situation I was living in and working in. And mind you, he was coming from being in Basra in Iraq and Baghdad. And he and many other guys who passed through that were coming from war zones were like, I'm freaked out.
Yeah.
Like this is wild, because just to imagine those places, while they're super dangerous because, Americans being a target and you're at war, there's also a lot of like, this is a green zone. This is the outside of the wire. This is you're a little more regulated. Whereas like I was out there just driving around in rebel territory, on the border with Liberia, just me and my dog
Uh,
and my Land Cruiser and like my office. And just, I think it was just the free range of it all, and the no cavalry's coming for you kind of thing.
mhm.
That kind of spooks guys from coming from that. So it's just a different environment. But he said, I'm going to build you a GORUCK. And I was like, what's a GORUCK? He goes, well, in the military, because I didn't get the same sort of training he did. I got a little briefing here and there. But he's like, well, it's where you put all, it's like your bug out bag where you put all your stuff, copies of your passport, extra money, water, an MRE or two, extra clothes, extra pair of shoes, stuff. If the what hits the fan, which he was like saying to me, basically, it's more likely to happen to you here in coup country than it is where I am, where we're ready for that at any moment. So he built this out for me. And then a bunch of other people in the embassy and that surrounding network said, can your husband build one out for me? So then it started to be like, hey, maybe you could do something like this. So I kept saying, like, why don't you do the GORUCK thing? And my husband took that to an extreme, like he does with everything, and decided he was going to build the perfect bag, right? The bag that would look good in New York, but also work in Baghdad. That was his original premise. So, he and I bounced some ideas off, and then he was off talking to some of his friends that were in the kind of fashion and, graphic design world in New York, and basically came up with our first bag, which is called GR1. And at the time, this had nothing to do with Rucking, mind you. We'll get there. I'll fast forward. So we do this. He figures out how to get this manufactured, makes this beautiful bag. It's made in America. It's very expensive. It's overbuilt. No one cares. No one wants to buy it, right? He goes on a tour with my dog at the time that I'd come back from Africa with a dog, and he took the dog on a trip to 48 states to try to like get this into little boutique men's shops around the country. One person bought one.
Oh my God.
One.
In what
and
state?
So he was,
I'm just curious.
it was online. It was always online. So I don't remember where this guy was from, but he remembers this guy's name.
Yeah, I bet.
I want to say like Pennsylvania, but that might be wrong. So anyway, he's just like, well, this is not going well. I've got all these bags that I had made and no one cares. And I've got this brand that I'm trying to build. And he ended up doing the first ever Tough Mudder with a bunch of Green Beret friends, putting a bunch of bricks in the bag, which he knew would be rucking. And he did that course with these buddies to show like how tough the bags were, like, look, they can withstand, going through the mud and with all these bricks in it, and they don't break and all these things. So fast forward from that, like something happened where more of those events, like where Jason was just getting people to put bricks in our bags to show how tough they were, kept happening. Like they started just popping up. And there was one in San Francisco. There's like DC and New York, and I did the one in New York. And right where we rucked by up in Brooklyn we call it GORUCK Beach, because there's been so many events there where the events were basically like a tour of the city with a ruck on your back, where a combat veteran of special operations basically put you through like all these challenges and made you work together as a team, carrying heavy things like a log, or getting into the cold Hudson and doing flutter kicks at 2 a.m.
Oh my God.
Sort of thing. So that kind of happened. It was just a weird thing to do, right? It was completely like not your textbook, like this is how you build a brand.
Yeah.
Jason was going around, he recruited some of his special forces buddies, and then they got their buddies, and next thing you know, you've got all these little events happening all over the country where they're meeting at 1 a.m. on a street corner and being led to these experiences. And at the beginning, it was just him showing up with a bunch of bricks and providing the bags, until it started to catch on. And then all of a sudden people wanted to buy their bags. They wanted to train up for these events. They wanted to know what rucking was. They wanted a little piece of this. And, that was all from 2010. So here we are in 2024. And along the way, we have, through trial and a lot of error, figured out that rucking is actually a great exercise, right? It's not just something that should belong to the military. It's not just something for guys to do, even though a lot of guys do like to do it because it seems cooler than walking, right? But, then Jason and I have been doing deep dives and getting with experts in the fitness world and talking to back doctors and foot doctors and knee doctors and, nutritionists and balance experts. And they're all saying what we hoped and thought they would say is, yes, this is something very basic to human capability. Like, our bodies are better when we use them. They're built to be sort of, not, like I said, not to the army where they kind of break you,
right?
Or not to overtrain, but we want to move around, and our bodies actually need to be bearing weight.
Right.
And this idea of rucking and the democratization or civilization is that instead of doing like a large amount of weight, you're a heavy weight, you're doing 20 pounds and you're doing it on your back. And that is actually engaging your back, your core. It's allowing you to work these muscles and bear this weight that's keep allowing you to retain muscle mass,
Hmm.
which, you know, after a certain age, like after 30, everyone starts losing muscle mass, and women, once they, you know, past menopause, it start losing at a much rapid rate. I'm preaching to the choir here. You understand this sort of stuff. So
Yes,
that's
but
where
not enough
we
people do.
exactly. And like there's all these, you know, good studies that I've read from some of our friends. Michael Easter, he did one of our events like way back, way in the early days. He was just curious about it because he's a curious guy. And Jason was like, please write more about rucking, write a
Yeah.
book on rucking. And I always tell Jason, Michael did one better. He wrote a wonderful book and added a chapter on rucking in it and basically kind of blew it up to, you know, opened it up that world for people. And some of this information that he talks about is really interesting to me. We all know we need what all the government entities say, where you're supposed to exercise, what is it, like 150 minutes of endurance activity, strength training twice a week. But like the difference is that, like, you know, not enough people are doing that, and especially not enough women.
Yes. Yeah, it's 100% correct. And I mean, just that the story itself and the evolution of how you arrived at this is so exciting and fun for me to listen to, and hopefully for others to hear as well, because it's really one of those true entrepreneur stories. It's like you didn't set out to, it wasn't even about like filling a gap in the marketplace. It was like one step removed
No.
from that, which is even more organic and better. It's like you literally were doing something that you found benefits from and found true enthusiasm and excitement
Yeah.
around, and really just thought more people should know about this. And then
Yes.
it's only after that that you have these conversations with doctors and experts and specialists, and it really kind of gels. Not only is this something that just is fun and it feels good, but the benefits
Mm-hmm.
are enormous. And it's something
Yeah.
that is truly taking us back to the place where we need to work to get back to as best as we can. I mean, Michael Easter is a perfect example. You know, he wrote that
Mm-hmm.
book, The Comfort Crisis, which I'm
Yes.
still kind of like dog earing pages and all of that, because there's always
Yeah.
something new and interesting about it. But it's so true. And it's even just in the last, you know, 30 minutes that we've been sitting here talking, I'm acutely aware that I've been sitting, and that
Yeah.
already is making me feel really uncomfortable. Like we have
Yeah.
gotten so incredibly comfortable, so incredibly sedentary, and
Mhm.
even just standing up and moving around, to your point, that's
Yeah.
sometimes not enough. Like we need to be bearing weight. We need to be, I mean, again, not to the military degree, obviously, but
No.
to the degree that like it's actually preparing our bodies. The military is preparing for combat. We just need to be prepared for life. We need to be prepared
Yes.
when, I mean, even yesterday, like my husband had to go and like drop some stuff off at the dump, and I was still dealing with COVID, so I couldn't help him. And he was able to lift this like enormous load
Hmm.
and load it into a pickup truck and get rid of, and like these are just things that we need to be able to do because we cannot take care of ourselves without having that like
Yes.
actual physical strength.
Right. And like I said earlier, our bodies feel better when we do these things,
Yes.
right? And most where what Michael was tapping into and uncovering for a lot of us is that our society and where we are today is built to find comfort. And
Mhm.
that is inherent to our human condition to seek that out. Like no blame. We are wired to do this. We have to know that. And then we have to kind of work backwards from
Yeah.
that to say, like, where to back to the basics. What are the things that I I would have done if I weren't driving so much, if I
Right.
weren't sitting so
Right.
much? And I think about this sometimes, like in the greater context of even human nature. It's like
Hmm.
sometimes you think, like, well, it's just human nature to feel of this way or act a certain way. But when you think about like the golden rule and things like that, we actually have to like peel those things back and say, well, I know this is my nature to act a certain way, but what really is beneficial to me is to sometimes act against our
Yeah.
nature.
Or
And I don't
nurture.
mean that, no, yes, exactly. And to not, and to think about them in a way that, like,
Yeah.
I mean, I have a 12-year-old daughter who is my dramatic foil in a lot of ways. And I love her for it, but tends to be more sedentary. She's not like interested. She's more interested in like reading and
Mhm.
crocheting and playing the piano. And I think
I
that's
feel that
lovely.
right here. My
But
theater
but
kid
she
just got a little warm.
she yes, so she's very different than how I grew up, just like running around all the
Yeah.
time. And I it's been a work in progress to just accept that from day one. As this She let me know who she was very early on. But recently I've been encouraging her. She's joining the cross country team for the first
Hmm.
time. And I've just been like, hey, you don't have to go fast. You just got to move. You don't have to be a star. I just want you to move your body.
Yeah.
And lately she's been saying things like, because we've been getting up, went the last 3 days, and she said, I feel better. I was like, sucking wind there, but now I feel better. Like she's
Mm.
actually, I'm sleeping better, mom. She's already like, and saying like, oh, I'm breathing better, I'm feeling better. And it's like so nice to hear that you don't have to be an Olympic athlete to get benefits
Right.
from moving
Well,
your
and
body.
again, yes, that's the entire beauty of this particular practice is you don't have to be an Olympic athlete. You don't even have to be an amateur athlete. You don't have to be athletic. You
Mm-hmm.
don't have to be super fit. You don't have to
Mm-mm.
bring anything to the table in order to up level what you're already doing. And if all you're already doing right now is like walking to your mailbox or walking your dog, and that's your
Mm-hmm.
exercise because of
Yeah.
time or
Yeah.
interest or whatever, then add some weight while you go walk your dog. And like the benefits just compound.
Yes. You said it. We often say, if you can walk, you can ruck.
Yeah.
It's a easy way to level up. My mom just had knee replacement surgery, and I noticed looking at her the other day that she's lost a lot of muscle mass
Yeah.
just from being having to be a little, more sedentary from the recovery. And it's funny, it's like she's so close to it, but I'm like, do you even have like a ruck? I got her one of our
Oops.
ruck plate carriers and 10-pound plate. And I said, when you're walking your dog Rascal, just put it on, mom. Just put it on for a little bit. And I put it on for her, got it sized and everything. And I mean, we'll see if she tries it, but I hope so, because I'm telling her like, yeah, like, the statistics are like, once you're over a certain age and
Yeah,
you fall, it's scary. Like it's
exactly.
50% you're going to be dead in 6 months.
Exactly.
And
I now
like,
have
that's
two
a
parents
shocking
who have,
fact.
yeah, it's a shocking fact. And it's something that I think until you experience it yourself or have somebody close to you experience it, it doesn't really crystallize. And yeah, I started to say now having two parents who have taken a fall, not a terrible fall, but one that was like scary enough to set them straight a
Mm-hmm.
little bit.
Yeah.
Those are things that I think about all the time. And the other
Right.
thing I think about all the time is what you just said about the decline of muscle mass. And I was reading something about how you should really think of it as muscle is kind of think of it as like a bank account, and you need to
Mm-hmm.
kind of make early deposits. And the earlier you deposit, the bigger your
Yes.
interest grows, which is like a strange, awkward metaphor. But the whole point is like the earlier you
No.
start doing this, the longer it stays with you. But the reverse is not true. You can't
Right.
start late, and then expect to
No.
still get those compounding interests because it just doesn't work that
Yeah.
way. So that's why I
Yes.
constantly am getting up on a soapbox. Like I'm already in my mid late 40s and I feel like I'm late. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
already seeing the difference between in the last
Mm-hmm.
year that I really started focusing on adding strength and building muscle. I'm seeing enormous differences and kicking myself that I didn't start this
Yeah.
earlier.
Yeah.
So that's
Agreed.
why I get loud about it. But so,
Yeah, no, I'm glad you are. That's just one thing that you mentioned when we met in New York and we were rocking around, and I was like, gosh, she gets it. You really understand, what we've been trying to say to more people. But, it's just these things take time for people to hear them. They need to hear them many times. And, I'm even doing this, like I said, to my 12-year-old daughter. I'm saying, you have to develop some muscle, healthy
yeah,
muscle memory and mass, like
yeah,
now. You got to start doing this. You got to sustain it. And, it doesn't take a lot when you're just adding to walking. I mean, walking is wonderful, right? Like walking can do a lot for you. And I'm a big proponent of like, walk places if you can, or bike places to get around, because that helps a massive amount. But these studies are saying that like your body mass index is not the only indicator.
no,
It really is about muscle
yeah.
mass, and the only way you're going to sustain and keep that muscle mass for as long as you can is by doing some weight bearing exercises.
Yeah. And I think also, not to make you, to maybe give you a little bit of comfort about your daughter, it's like, it's not only that people have to hear it a number of times, but it depends, like people receive things on different frequencies. So
Mhm.
you can say the same thing to your daughter dozens and dozens and dozens of times, and she can watch you get up every day and do this. But if, I don't know who her idols are, but say Taylor Swift came around and was like,
Yeah,
hey, you need to lift weights, girls, they would all be doing it. It's really just a matter of
exactly.
like how it lands. My husband's been telling me for years I should think about, well, how much protein? And I'm like, shut up. And how much weight are you doing? Shut up. I'm fine. And
Yeah.
it took me doing my own research and hearing from people
Hmm.
like you,
Yes.
and maybe more like, I don't know, maybe just hearing more from my female peers rather than my
Yeah.
partner. And all of a sudden I was like, I'm just going to do the experiment. And sure enough,
Yeah.
I do the experiment and my clothes fit differently and I'm feeling more energetic and I'm sleeping better and all of these things.
Hmm.
And I will
Hmm.
never give him the credit for it in real person. But if he's listening to this, then he's getting a little bit of credit already. But so, yeah, so I want to ask you in that framework of how to utilize it. I mean, we are
Hmm.
saying like from day one, just start picking things up and walk a little farther than,
Yeah.
you would have already. But are people using rucking as a workout in itself, or is it really more of a recovery tool, or is it both? And if it is, like, what's the difference in how you go about it?
It's both. It's all the things. People use it for different things. Like I know a lot of people that just like to ruck to train for for hiking, for when they're going, if they live in a place where they don't, have mountains, but they want to train for one, will ruck to do that. I also, we know people that are runners that will ruck on their recovery days,
Mm.
you know, and that's, I think, a big opportunity to get to talk to runners. I'm a runner. I ran in college. I love running, but I got to a point where it just, you know, I was running high mileage in college and I plagued with a lot of injuries like that. But if I get to a sustainable period where I can run just like, couple long trail runs a week and you can keep your VO2 max where you want it, but doing other things to kind of maintain and build muscle. Because running in of itself is depleting, your
Yeah.
muscle. Um, and even when I was in college, they would, you guys need to get in the weight room, you endurance runners, and we'd be like, you
Right.
know
Right.
and
No.
but that was back then. Now we know that's so important, like the core workouts and the weight training actually does make you run faster. And I love the fact that rucking sneaks that in
Yeah.
without being in a weight room, without having to go in a weight room, because it's just not part of where I'm
Yeah.
comfortable. So yes, so people using it recovery, people using it to train for, bigger things. Some people, this is what they do to like max up their walking, and like you
Right.
said, that
Because you can
we like
treat
to
it
talk.
as cardio or as
Yeah,
weight or both, really. I mean, you can get to your cardio zones too. I'll let you
you can.
rattle it off.
Yeah, no, you're right, but change the weight.
Hmm.
There's a lot of variables you can do. You can change the weight, you can change the pace, you can change the elevation, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
And those, messing around with those factors can really get you into, zone two and even
Yeah.
beyond if you want, sort of
Yeah.
thing, depending on how spicy you want it to get. But yeah, I mean, yeah, people that train for our events, because they're these long kind of difficult endurance events, they really do a lot of rucking to do that. But I tend to say I like to build in rucking of, if you're wearing a lot of weight and you're going for a long time, you are compressing,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
And I feel it sometimes. I'll be like, oh, I got, and then I want to go lengthen. So you yoga. I even find surfing to be kind of a lengthening exercise, because you're just, I'm going like this and I'm working these different muscles,
Hmm.
which I think are great. And even running. Running feels good. It's kind
Yeah.
of like, okay, I'm lengthening these muscles and like that. So, we also talk about just rucking for people that just hiding the miles, like you mentioned, walking your dog. If you like to walk with your significant other or a group, or when you're pushing a baby, stroller, or some people call it mow ruck when they're mowing. They'll just put it on and it gets like a little extra, burned. I mean, when you ruck, you're burning 3 times more calories than you do when you walk. And you're also putting
Okay.
a
Say
lot less.
then, because I know there are
Yeah.
people that want to hear that. Say it again.
Yeah. So on average, it's about 3 times more calories you burn when you ruck with let's say 20 pounds.
Yeah.
around 20 pounds. I mean, 10, you're going to get more, but it's just going to be a little bit less. But we do most of our kind of tests and studies around 20 pounds because that's what most people can start with,
And when you
assuming
say
you're not
most
my,
people, is that women and men?
yes, women and men. Like
Okay.
I had a friend the other day, she's just getting into it and, she's about my height and weight, and like 115, 5'5", and she's about the same. And I was like, you need 20 pounds. And
Yeah.
she's doing great with it. Like my mom, she's almost 75. I'm going to start her at 10, because she's never really done this before. So that's where you have to like kind of build up, but it's really easy. You'll find you'll get 10 pounds will start to feel really light, and then you want to, gradually up
Yeah,
the
and I
weight.
think that's important to highlight here because I'm sure people who are listening that haven't had much experience are kind of like waiting
Mm-hmm.
for you to, drop whatever
Mm-hmm.
the scary number is. It's 10 pounds. It's not, I mean, most pets weigh less than that. That's why I say just carry your pet if you don't have weight. Like carry
Yes.
your dog around for a little bit.
We had one woman put a bag of rice in her
Yeah,
backpack or a
exactly.
bag of sugar. I remember she
Yeah.
went on TV, local TV, to be like, I just put a bag of sugar in there. It was so funny.
No, it's true.
I
Like whatever
mean,
you can find around the house. I think I told you, but I
yes.
didn't have my gear when I was in my other place, and I had
Uh-huh.
these like huge stone trivets, these like
Yes.
plate warmer or plate holders, and they slid right into the laptop
Nice.
section of my
I
pack. And I
love
was like,
that.
this is perfect.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to
Yeah.
take that
So,
much.
but 20 pounds, if you went for a ruck, you would burn 3 times as many calories as if you just went for a walk. And that's
Yeah,
significant.
it is
That's
significant.
that is significant for someone who, like you said, is trying to maybe hide the miles because they're crunched for time or they need some more motivation
Yeah,
to get some benefit, quicker. I mean, I have this one woman who is a friend of mine. After she got pregnant, she was looking to, lose weight, but it was just like, how am I going to find time away from
yeah,
this? Like it was hard to find something consistent. She talks about just grabbing a ruck and pushing the baby in the stroller just for, couple miles every day.
yeah,
And she's like, I could feel the pounds melting off of me, as what was going. It was she said it was, and it was, strengthening too,
yeah.
without a lot of, postpartum women should not be bouncing a lot, like all these things have been moved around inside of you. It's like, no, just walk with a little bit of load.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I also learned in one of my conversations, I think I shared it with you before, with a holistic physical therapist, that during pregnancy, there's so much shift happening in your body that you actually
Mm-hmm.
become a little bit more flexible. You become more
Yes.
pliant. And that's a really good time to
Mm-hmm.
very slowly and safely add in this strength building because your body is literally primed for it. Your body is saying,
Yes.
like, I am now ready to build again. And I think
Well, and
also,
yeah.
yeah, go ahead.
No, go ahead. I always just had a thought like, think about back in time before there were, strollers and,
Yep.
different things. Like women literally wrap their babies onto their body,
Yeah.
on their backs, or usually on their backs in a lot of the cultures, still in Africa, still in South America, and maybe sometimes in front loading capacities. But that was actually like women were equipped to
Yeah.
to do that. That was how they were carrying, an increasingly, you know, heavier load as the
Yeah.
baby grew. And it's really, this is where really interesting to kind of look back at culture and say, there are some really good lessons that
Yeah.
can still apply today. We might have to manufacture them a little bit differently,
I
because
know.
maybe it's not socially acceptable to just, put your baby on your back. We wear them more on the front, which honestly, that's great exercise too.
Yeah, maybe not as good for your posture, but yeah.
Right.
I
Yeah.
mean, I'm big on this whole concept of like sneaky wellness because I think that
Yes.
so many people find, being super intentional about it to maybe feel a little disingenuous or maybe just feel like too much of an
Mm-hmm.
effort. And so any opportunity, and yes, to your point, we've been doing this as a,
Mm-hmm.
as a, not even as a culture, but as a species for
Mm-hmm.
millennia. We just haven't actually put a name and a brand on it. But I think, and I think also, especially what I was going to say before was this is something that for people who literally cannot stand the idea of going into a gym, people
Yes.
who are, outdoor enthusiasts and all they want to do is like run or be out on the water or whatever, and
Hmm.
they can't stand the idea of actually going into a gym to build strength. This is a perfect opportunity. You don't have to
Love
go
it.
into a gym. You stay out of doors. You can stand still and do squats
Yes.
and with your pack on, and that is, I mean, that's in a huge workout in itself. So,
And we love that because we're big proponents of getting outside. We know, you know, just name all the benefits
yeah.
of, getting out in nature, being outside with other, exposing yourself to the uncomfort of the elements.
Yep.
And it's really good. It's really good for us. It's getting us out of this, climate controlled environment all the time, right? I mean, I think it's fine to have climate control. It's really nice when there's a huge thunderstorm to have a roof over your head and to be
Yes.
dry and not be cold or too hot. I mean, these are wonderful luxuries that we have, but you know, it is important to remind our bodies and our systems and our heads that that we can survive, and we actually do well
Yeah.
when we're
And that,
exposed to these other elements.
and I think you're right. Like that word is key. Those are luxuries. Those are
Hmm.
not things that I think are should be, bare necessities. Those are luxuries, and we need to
Hmm.
do better at
Hmm.
just acclimating ourselves to a little bit of
Yes.
that discomfort, because it really does go a long way. I mean, this whole concept of comfort zone, we use it in like
Hmm.
social situations, but the
Yes.
reality is we need to use it more. And I'm the first one to say, and my husband also still listening, he will be the first one to say, like, I'm a bit soft, I don't really like being cold and all that, but I'm getting
Right.
better. Like I can feel myself becoming more tolerant. I did a 6-minute cold plunge in 40 degrees last week and
Wow.
like completely blew my
Amazing.
own mind. So I
Yeah.
feel like these incremental changes that are happening. And if I can do that,
Yeah. And you know what? You don't have to do all these things.
right.
You could experiment and see, like, what works for you, what really kind of, like you said, blows your mind or gets you in a better state of mind, or, feeling a better way. Because I think this is all about, like, what's sustainable, what actually works for you, because there's a lot of good things, but a lot of them are very simple. We might have to make a little effort to build them into our lifestyle now. But it's like, what did Leonardo da Vinci has this great quote. It's like, simplicity is the ultimate sophistication, right? So, like, finding ways to simplify your life is really hard, right? Where and how we live today.
Yeah.
And I think Michael Easter, I read it. I think all these examples of people coming in and saying, like, I can find a better way from you to carry that water
Yep.
than, this long wait. And then, but, the person doing it says, but then I wouldn't have this time to
Yeah.
spend and go through the process. I mean, this is why the slow food movement,
Yeah.
and all these different things. And,
This
and,
is
and
why I still keep a paper notebook and journal instead of keeping everything on my
yes,
phone. It's exactly for that
yes.
reason.
Yeah. And we, use technology for what it's worth. But remember how to do these other basic things. You mentioned the posture thing. I just wanted to touch on this because we get this question a lot. It's like,
Mm.
well, what about front loading weight? Why should, because what we are big proponents are is carrying the weight high up on your back in a stable way. And that's what, our gear really focuses on, and it's designed to do. It wasn't initially, it was just supposed to be a great travel bag.
Yeah.
But over time, we have been continually iterating in our R&D, and just out of kind of curiosity, and getting feedback from all these people that have been doing, carrying our rucks in different ways over the years. We're constantly refining and marrying that up with the science, right, that we've been learning along the way. And we found, people say, well, why can't I just wear a weight vest, or just, like, the front loader or something? And you mentioned posture, and that's kind of the biggest reason we say, yeah, listen, if your job requires you to, wear body armor or carry weight up front, like, you should probably train the way you fight. Like, if that's part of your life, then you should do that. But those aren't, I think, the majority of people wanting to do this for exercise. The problem is that it kind of compresses your chest, so it's a little harder to breathe when you're trying to get into, like, a zone 2. And then to relax that, to be
Yeah.
able to breathe better, you naturally kind of make your chest, I'm kind of making my chest a little more concave.
Yeah.
You're kind of trying to get more air through, and you're creating a like a slump in your back. And I think that over time, if you talk to people like that, they have chronic back issues
Hmm.
that carry weight that way. So, like I said, you go through the prehistoric era of a museum, you'll see people, the cavemen and women carrying, things on their backs, because this
Yeah.
is our, such a strong muscle, and this is how we can carry the weight better. So that's one of the reasons why we say carrying it on your back is probably most beneficial for most people.
Yeah. I want to be respectful of your time, and I have a couple more questions, so I will hopefully we can
Yeah,
just kind
sure.
of
Go
touch
ahead.
on them really quickly. But
Yeah.
can you talk just briefly about the just kind of the community and the events and also the patches? Because I
Hmm.
think those are all really cool
Oh,
elements of what
yeah.
you guys are doing.
Oh, this is something I'm really close to. I've done multiple versions of our events over the years. I've met a lot of great people. We have hundreds of ruck clubs all over the world that where people are getting together, you know, casually and sometimes competitively to ruck. So yes, the events I talked a lot about the origin of those, and there's been evolutions over the year, and there's been a lot of iterations of the original challenge event that was the 12 hours overnight, with 20 to 30 pounds, depending on your body weight. And the community has been probably the most fulfilling part of all of this, the hearing the stories of, people saying they were in a dark place, and this community and activity got them to a better spot. The friendships made, the health benefits, and we just love hearing all those stories. And we've always said, like, GORUCK has just always been about the people since day
Yeah.
one. And, something that is really kind of exciting to Jason and me is that it's not just there's a lot of different types of people that come to do this. It's not just, you know, we have a lot of military friendly events and communities, but we have a lot of people that are just fitness enthusiasts, or we have some, people that are hikers and whatnot. I mean, we've got a ruck club in Tokyo led by some expats there, and they're a lot of the people there are there because they played this cool video game associated with Pokemon Go. It's just
That's awesome.
different. I love like all the different ways it's touching. Now of late, we've been doing more with CrossFit. In a lot of ways, it's a natural fit because, CrossFit has a wonderful community,
Hmm.
and they also have military origins, and, but they have a lot of cool exercises, and rucking is like an easy sort of, addition to that. So the community is really special. We have lots of ways that people can kind of get involved. I think we started at a very like high level, right? Where it's like intense endurance event. And for a while we kept building, like, let's make it harder and harder and harder. And I was like, well, I always had this measure, like, well, I want something that my mom will do.
Yeah.
I want
Yep.
I want I want to think about the access, like, how do you get in? So I've been working with a team of a wonderful team of people that have, been teachers in the fitness world, and, well, been traveled in different places. And we have a tribe kids is our like kids, little program. And then we have, ruck club leaders that have get-togethers and trainings. And then we have tribe, which is just like sort of an inspiration and workout based, things to do, hopefully with other people. But if you need to do it on your own, you can do that. But really, we know a lot of people are doing this on their own to get to, up their fitness level and to feel better. But we're hoping that they'll eventually connect with others, because that's what Jason and I like best. Every weekend that we're in town, which is most of them, we have a workout in our driveway in the afternoon. And sometimes it's 5 people. The other day it was 25.
Hmm.
It just really depends, and it's free. We bring out all our sandbags and our ruck plate carriers and ruckers, and we have these med balls, and we do basically just a quick rucking based workout with different sort of movements, always with like you have to ruck to the second stop sign and back. And it's actually it's more about sort of the conversations afterwards,
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
where sort of it's good to do the workout. It's good to share some suffering in some capacity, one way or the other. Sometimes the workouts are harder than others, but it's like getting together, because then from that it's like, oh yeah, we're gonna go do that too. Why don't we go together? Or why come over? Why don't you stay for dinner? We're gonna watch the soccer game here. So just we're Jason and I are big proponents for to kind of the basics and
Yeah.
keeping things simple, and knowing your neighbors, not just in a time of crisis, although that's important too. We get hurricanes here, and it's Jason secretly loves the day after the hurricane, even though, there's always rough things going on. And he says everybody's out in the street checking things out, checking on each other.
Yeah.
And it's really beautiful. And you get a little, you don't always want a crisis to bring that out. You want to have that sustainability,
Love
more
that. No, that's
consistently.
such a beautiful idea. And yeah, I mean, obviously, with a sensitivity towards things that have gone very, very wrong, but it's
Sure.
totally true. I mean, that's when we do our best, I think, as a culture, is in the face of adversity. And, whether
Yeah.
it's post 9/11 or in the early days of the pandemic when everybody was freaking out, but also checking on each other and making sure,
Yes.
just making sure everybody had what they needed. And especially when you don't know what happens next. And I feel, unfortunately, like we live in a time right now where literally every day we have no idea what is in store when we open our news
Oh my
updates,
gosh.
and it's terrifying. So any
It's
way that you
hard.
can,
And
yeah,
yeah, and I think the best, like, we ended up, we basically we get our news just by reading magazines that we, like, and trying not to focus on the
yeah,
24/7,
smart.
algorithm sort of thing, but talking to people, right? Getting like, sometimes we don't have enough touch points like that. And I think, one great thing about fitness and getting together, like, whatever it is, rucking, running, yoga, whatever's getting you something, like, you get to talk to people face to face. You get to have this dialogue that maybe we're not having in, the older institutions where people were having those, things that what they used to. I mean, the fabric of our society is changed, and I think there's some good things and there's some bad things with that, and it's really about weaving, new patterns together to keep them intact, or keeping the ones that still work strong.
Yeah.
And it really comes down to, we like to, we deal with a lot of, people that are, maybe former military, or, we hear a lot of stories about, gosh, I was in doing with a difficult time, and then I just started rucking, and I started rucking with my neighbor, and we just would go out and talk, and I started really looking forward to that. I've had a lot of pastors from churches reach out and say they do that in their church groups, which is really
It
cool
makes
too.
total sense.
Right? It's
Makes total
like
sense.
you're able to talk, but it's not like sitting
Yeah.
and you're not facing each other. You're actually doing something, but you're able to talk. And it's like, all these things, walking meetings, and we do
Yeah.
rucking meetings
Yeah.
a lot.
What
I'm at a
it,
standing desk now, but if we weren't recording, I would be walking around in a
yeah.
safe place. And, I feel like I'm more I'm engaged when in those moments, and able
It's
to do
true.
that
There's
even more
actually
in
like
person.
there's like psychological, or there's actual, research that suggests that you retain information better when you're moving while you absorb
Yes.
it. So that's why listening to a podcast while you're walking, like I can remember, parts of audiobooks. I remember where I
Hmm.
was when I heard that chapter because something sort of just integrated in my
Yes,
brain without even realizing it. So yeah, I love
exactly.
that.
Really cool.
We have to wrap up, but I have this very burning question that I need to know. And
Oh
I feel
gosh.
like because your husband sounds so much like my husband in their need to be prepared and also have the best possible preparation ever. And everybody, honestly, at the beginning of the pandemic was like, yeah, I bet you guys probably had like the best, the best go bag. And we did. I'm so
Yes.
curious to know, like, what is in your go bag right now?
Oh yeah. We have like a little bit of everything, like what I described before, like copies of passports, some MR, even they can last forever, those things. Extra pair of shoes, a bottle of water, a water filter, a first aid kit, tourniquet, need tourniquets, some whatever it is that the stop the bleeding powder, and have a
Snacks?
handgun. Have a
Yeah, okay.
handgun.
We don't have a handgun.
Snacks, bars,
Bars.
like
Okay.
granola bars, but like other snacks sometimes will beef sticks, like I like the chomps, and some cash and some comms. We have some good two-way, like some radios.
All right.
and a hand charger
Yep. We
and
have
a
that. We
radio.
have,
Okay, good. Yeah, that one's good. Hand charger, radio. I have a handcuff key and some Kevlar string in case I need to escape.
girl. All right.
But
I need
that's
a
it.
bullet
That's
pointed
it.
list. Okay. That's a good ruck. That is a good go bag.
I don't want to work with all that stuff
No, no,
unless
no,
I
you
have
don't.
to, right?
Yeah.
Um,
You
yeah,
have to
cool.
shed as you go. Thank you so much for sharing that. And thank you so much for sharing all of this. I think it's such an incredibly inspiring movement that you have created. And I'm so happy to help you spread the word however possible and get on board. I was already looking to see where the upcoming New York Ruck events are, and there looks like something coming up
Yeah,
in October that I want to do.
great.
Yeah, because I'm not a runner. I never will be, but I like the idea of a little competition or a little self-guided, self-paced challenge. And so I might be
Yeah,
interested.
well, keep me posted, and I'll see if I can join you. I
Yeah,
like
for
the one.
sure.
Thank you, Erica.